Wild West is a place of dust, dirt, and dirty dealers. Before and during the Civil War, the west of the Mississippi had arid weather, nearly impossible for vegetation to be grown. Most of the economy flourishing in the Wild West was due to farming and the raising of cattle, then to be stolen by groups such as the Cowboys, which were led by Mexican outlaw men as well as of African American descent. Western outlaws were infamous for robbery, assault, and murder. Henry McCarty, known as Billy the Kid, was the epitome of such concept. At only 14 years old, Henry escaped his very first prison, becoming a wanted man and shaping his legacy as the youngest and most dangerous man in the wild, wild west. Government and gangs alike knew about Billy's crimes and killings until his young death of 21 years at the hand of law enforcement. Born in the year 1859 in New York City, New York, Henry McCarty was surrounded by a loving family consisting of his mother, Catherine McCarty, his father, Patrick McCarty, and his younger brother, Joseph McCarty. After the death of his father, Henry and his family migrated southwest to Indianapolis, Indiana, where his mother met William Henry Harrison Antrim, who would become her husband later in life, when they moved to Wichita, Kansas in 1870. Shortly after, the family moved to Silver City, New Mexico, where Henry's mother then died of tuberculosis, which had greatly impacted the way Henry's life would fluctuate.
A skinny, buck-toothed teenager, Henry hardly seemed to be destined to become a notorious legend of the Wild West. As much as he enjoyed dancing and singing at local shows in Silver City, he was also known to hang around a flock of boys who often acted in a mischievous manner. One of his earliest crimes was to steal a staggering amount of butter from a local farmer, which he had quickly sold. The local farmer had reported the butter missing, though Henry's guilt drove him to confess. The sheriff let him off the hook for his first offense, though his luck wouldn't stick around for very long. At this very least, Henry was guilty for choosing the wrong friends. While he stayed at Silver City, he then met a man known as Sombrero Jack, which his name was George Schaffer, who wore a large Mexican hat which had given him the name. Sombrero Jack broke into a local laundry and stole guns, money, and clothing. Schaffer asked Henry to hide the clothing for him. Henry was then turned in by the owner of the laundromat. George Schaffer got away.
Henry continued his life while fleeing out into American Indian Territory in the neighboring state of Arizona. It is certain that he lived near the edge of Camp Grant, a U.S. Army outpost not so far from the New Mexico border, while wavering between an honest life and a life of crime. He held jobs such as working in a ranch and then working in a small hotel. During his free time, he often learned how to handle a rifle and a pistol while taking part in theft and rustling.
Like many other criminals, he knew he had to use other names to cover his true identity, with names such as William Antrim, Will H. Bonney, Kate Antrim, etc. His time in Arizona eventually came to an end as he was arrested for horse theft. Officers had locked him in shackles as he knew his ways around every prison he was put inside of. Coincidentally, the man who had forged the shackles was named Francis Cahill. Cahill had bullied Henry, and he did not miss a chance to throw him in jail. Cahill's mind was very clear after removing one of his burdens in life, leaving them in jail, but not for long, as Henry once again escaped, likely with the help of two of his friends in the military. Henry and his old friend Francis had met once again.
What started as a heated argument then turned into a wrestling match, which when Cahill was pinned to the ground, Henry fired his pistol, piercing Cahill's stomach. The local blacksmith had fallen weak while Henry ran away. Cahill lived on to another day after such injury, having sworn that Henry Antrim was the killer. Henry McCarty, also known as Billy the Kid, was on the run once again. Still a kid, at 17 years of age, weighing just about 140 pounds, he had already learned to speak fluent Spanish and knew how to handle a gun, had experience as a ranch hand, yet other of his talents such as stealing horses were not so bright to remark. Worried that the Arizona authorities might be on his tail, he went on the journey seeking for a place nobody would know him. He called himself William Bonney, which may have had family connection for Henry, but there is no clear evidence of such. Bill was short for William, yet he adopted the nickname of Kid, therefore creating Billy the Kid.
While participating in the Lincoln County War, a war between rebel factions that met, Henry was a changed man with another mind. Billy the Kid had found some new friends, it seemed. Although murder indictment hovered him, he felt little to no reason to be arrested. The local sheriff's department had feared that arresting such regulator will only reignite violence. The men celebrated the new peace by drinking, though Billy wasn't much of a drinker himself. One night, him and his friends went out to a local saloon, where they went on the street, saw a civilian, which happened to be a lawyer, and told him to dance. Unwilling to be made a fool, the lawyer refused. The poor man was shot in the chest, left off to die, as the men continued walking, taking the life of an innocent man named Houston Chapman, which will have an impact upon Billy's life. Chapman's murder caused fear in Lincoln. Lew Wallace was the new county sheriff. Lew Wallace was sent by President Rutherford B. Hayes to clean up the lawless mess in New Mexico. Wallace declared the general pardon after the Lincoln County War and appointed new law officers to restore order. He needed to bring Chapman's killers to the justice, or he would risk losing the public's confidence and support. The kid made a shrewd move. He offered to tell everything he had seen and testify against Chapman's killers in return. He asked the governor to let him off the hook for his crimes during the time. Wallace took the deal.
The kid kept his fair share of such a deal, as he allowed himself to be arrested in Lincoln and gave his testimony, just as he and the governor had agreed. The kid waited for the governor to wipe away the indictments against Henry, but he grew impatient. Eventually, the kid simply walked away from jail and rode into the horizon. Out of Lincoln in June of 1879, the sheriff did nothing to stop him. The kid returned to his shenanigans, traveling from town to town, gambling, and committing a variety of crimes. The following year, a new sheriff in town was elected, Sheriff Pat Garrett, a former buffalo hunter and a tall, intimidating figure, who vowed to restore law and order in Lincoln County. Garrett tracked the kid along with another 4 outlaws and found them in a house. One of the men stepped out to feed the horses, yet Garrett and his men pulled the trigger. After a short confrontation, the men inside the house surrendered. He had finally caught the kid.
A trial finally took place in which the kid was charged with murder, leading to a penalty of death. He was tried for the murder of Sheriff William Brady, and a jury found him guilty. He was sentenced to hang and sent back to Lincoln County to await his execution. Garrett locked the kid in the new room next to the sheriff's office and left 2 guards to keep an eye on him. He had a plan, however. He asked the guard to take him to the outhouse behind the courthouse, and on the way back, he attacked the guard, wrestling away his gun. When the guard ran for help, the kid shot him. He grabbed the shotgun from the sheriff's office. He climbed out to the balcony and spoke to a small crowd gathering in front of the building. He said that anyone who interferes with his escape would share the guard's fate. The kid stole a horse and left the town.
2.5 months later, lawmen tracked him to Fort Sumner, an old military post northeast of Lincoln. A showdown took place where, in the night of July 14, 1881, the kid walked into a darkened room where Garrett was waiting for him. The sheriff fired twice, and the outlaw, Billy the Kid, fell dead. He was 21 years of age. The kid made an unlikely legend. During the majority of his life, he was merely a small-time crook, yet toward the end of his life, he suddenly emerged as a famous villain. His infamy was influential, portrayed in the local newspapers at that time. To this day, more than 135 years later after his death, which marked his ultimate fate, the tragedy of his story has had a groundbreaking impact in film history, as when Hollywood discovered Billy the Kid, more than 40 movies had been made about him, many portraying different personalities for the young man behind such name. In some films, he is an avenger who acts only because he or his friends have been wronged. In others, he is an unpredictable monster who kills for sport. So much has been said and written about Billy the Kid, as some people claim he did not die in 1881, and that Pat Garrett shot another man, that he escaped and lived his life under a different name. Henry's success is portrayed as the influence's mark left in the Wild West, a young gunslinger, careless of any consequences. The 20th century was an important timeline for Western film, as Henry, among other important outlaws, obliviously had created, as to what must have been seen back then as creating a living for a simple man. Billy the Kid, the tale of what could have made a rich man, made a dead man.